Hey everybody, it's Helen Hillix and welcome to the show today. I am excited to talk to you about what is freedom. Is it doing whatever you want? If not, what is it? Well, I like when I'm talking about a certain topic like that, I like to look it up and see what Webster or whatever dictionary has to say about it. And the two that there were three actually that I thought were interesting. The first was the state of not being imprisoned or enslaved. The second definition was absence of subjugation to a foreign domination. And the third was the power of self-determination. So I don't know how you think of freedom. I think most of us think of it very simply as I can do whatever I want. At least that's what I have thought of as freedom most of the time, is I can do what I want. And so I think it's important for us to take a look at the things that we believe. Sometimes we believe we are imprisoned or enslaved by things or people that we actually are not. And sometimes we enslave and imprison ourselves and are allowing something to dominate us without even knowing it. So I really think it's a powerful topic and one that I really want to explore deeply with you. So let's dive in. So how often have you heard somebody say, I feel trapped. I feel trapped because I'm married, or I have a girlfriend, or I have a boyfriend and my boyfriend's jealous, so I'm trapped. Implying that they are being imprisoned or enslaved, or implying that they are being dominated by a foreign domination. And what I have discovered as a therapist for 35 years is that that's not usually the case. That usually the case is that there are expectations of being in a relationship. That doesn't mean that you're trapped. It means that you get to decide whether or not you want that relationship. And if so, how can you be accountable both to yourself, to the universe, and to the partner in co-creating a really healthy dynamic? Most people don't know how to do that. And so most people end up feeling like they're trapped or enslaved by relationships. How many times have you heard your friends or your parents or somebody say, I just can't take it anymore. I just can't take it anymore. And if you've listened to others of my videos and podcasts, you know that my answer to that is what you really can't take is yourself and your reaction to whatever's going on. So that brings up another topic of, what are you being enslaved by or dominated by? And so often it's your own thinking. It's your own ego. So I want to list some of the things that came to my mind, and I'm sure there are many more. I've gotten some interesting letters lately of people who are adding to the lists that I have, and I love that. I love that. So, what or whom do you feel enslaved by, that you feel is impinging on your freedom? Is it a husband or wife or girlfriend or boyfriend? Is it the government? So many people are fighting right now that the government is trying to take away my freedom by asking me to wear a mask. Well, I think so many of the same people were arguing about wearing a helmet on a motorcycle or a seatbelt in the car. You can go without it, but you're endangering your life and you're endangering the lives of others. So is the government impinging on your freedom, or is your ego just telling you that when actually you are impinging on the freedom of others? This is how tricky it gets to discuss freedom and what is it. Are you being dominated by prejudice, other people's prejudice toward you because you're fat or you're old or you're black or you're gay? And you're being dominated by that and you don't feel free? Are you dominated by somebody else's reactivity? Many times I hear from my clients that Of course I'm upset because my wife is constantly nagging me. Well, actually, that person is being dominated by their own reactivity. They don't feel free because they don't know how to react to whatever is going on inside their partner that makes them act out. I was just working with a man tonight about this issue, and it's so powerful once you realize that freedom from reactivity comes from freeing yourself from your own reactions, not from the other person's. Is fear dominating you? Right now in the pandemic time of 2020, fear is dominating so many people. And it's easy to understand, isn't it? There's a great deal of financial insecurity. The markets are, the job markets are collapsing. People are losing their jobs and their health insurance. People are losing their lives and the lives of their relatives and loved ones. So are you being dominated by fear? And that's why you don't feel free to be happy or to live your life. Are you dominated by a compulsion or an addiction? The addiction to pornography is something I talk a lot about because of the sacred sexuality focus of my work. And, freedom from that kind of compulsion or addiction is incredible freedom. I worked with a guy recently. At the end of the day, he said, I feel free. I feel freed from my porn compulsion, and I feel free to pursue sacred sexuality with my wife. Before that, he felt enslaved or imprisoned or dominated by that compulsion. And that's a very common thing. Ego is another thing that is absolutely universally dominating us all, and myself as well. The ego tells me, you should be afraid about this, or you should be angry about that, or you're not getting your way, or whatever it is that ego voices, blah, 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 in my head all the time. And I know it is in yours as well. And that is something that most of us are dominated by a good deal of the time. The idea of escapism is another thing that dominates us. It's like, I can't stand to be in pain. I hate to be in pain. I don't want to be uncomfortable. She makes me uncomfortable. He makes me uncomfortable. My job makes me uncomfortable. My children make me uncomfortable, so I have to escape. That's being dominated by something too. And we think of that. That's one of those things that we think of. I'm free. I can do whatever I want. I can watch 18 hours of TV a day if I want to. I'm free, but you're not free. You're dominated by escapism. So I think it's important to take a look at whether you're being dominated by something that's happening like you think you are, which is, I'm going to say, never the case, or you're being dominated by the way you're interpreting it and by your own inability to cope with reality. That is a huge part of what makes us feel trapped and imprisoned and dominated, is not being able to handle our own emotional reactions to pain. And life's full of pain. Are you dominated by the idea that you're entitled to live a happy, free, independent, wealthy life when that's not the reality that you're in? Do you feel entitled to have people, kowtow to you and please you and consider you all the time? Well, that entitlement, if that's dominating your thinking, you're not going to be free to align yourself with reality very easily. The desire for instant gratification, oh my gosh, this is one of my favorite ones because our society is so focused around instant gratification. If you have a headache, take this. If you have a nasal congestion, take that. If you have erectile dysfunction, take this. If you don't like your hair color, dye it. If you don't like your breast size, change it. If you don't like your neck, have it cut. So we are so into instant gratification. And is that you being free to make yourself look the way you authentically believe is the right way? Or are you being dominated and imprisoned? Is your freedom really taken away because you've bought into the Madison Avenue idea that you should look a certain way? So when you talk about freedom, the United States is the land of the free, not, of course, there is an element of that. It's absolutely true, but we are not free in so many ways here because we are dominated by so many things. The societal expectations, the fears, the prejudice, all of those things render us imprisoned without our even knowing it. And instant gratification is one of the main ones. Another thing that keeps us from being free is old habits, old ways of thinking. Men are, going to cheat on you. Women are going to leave you. Food is the best kind of comfort there is. Being angry is perfectly okay. I'm entitled to be angry. And I rage when I feel vulnerable. That's an old habit. So old habits can be something that keep us from feeling free. Religious dogma is another one. Do you have that kind of religious training in your childhood or your family or community that makes you feel like you have to do these things, only these things? And it's not between you and God, it's the church telling you, or the synagogue, or the whatever, telling you that this is the way it has to be. That's another thing that we can feel very subjugated through and dominated by. So what is real freedom? These things, all these things help us to see that most of us actually don't feel very free. We don't notice it because we're so used to that instant gratification compulsion, or that we are so used to those old habits, those old rigid ways of thinking, that, working hard all day long, 60 hours a week, that's a good thing. Is that freedom? It's not just the working 60 hours a week, it's the belief that that's the way it has to be. So the need to be right is also something that truly robs us of our freedom, because then we are not free to explore and inquire. It's amazing, all the things that rob us of our freedom, and they are things that we cling to with all of our mights. So it's very, very interesting topic to truly explore with a neutral, open mind. And ask yourself, I want you to ask yourself, what things do you do just by routine, just by rote? What things do you do that way? And the answer for most people is almost everything. I get up at a certain time, I exercise in a certain way, or I don't exercise at all, and I eat this for breakfast, and I have this many alcoholic drinks per week or per day or whatever it is. And, we have sex 3 times a week or 3 times a year or whatever is your routine. We are creatures of habit, and those habits render us imprisoned in a certain rigid way of thinking. And I want you to take time after you listen or watch this to ask yourself what things are rendering you imprisoned, and what things do you really see that need to be changed so that you could feel free. So let's talk about, what is real freedom. I've talked about all these things that we are imprisoned by. And I've talked about the fact that almost everyone thinks that freedom is the right to do whatever you want. And you can argue about that. You're entitled to your own opinion, of course. And that's another thing, that opinions totally imprison us. We have opinions about each other. We have opinions about the way life should be. We have opinions about our boss and the president and whatever else. We have opinions about COVID-19 and how it should be handled or not handled. So what is real freedom? Is it being your authentic self? That's very trendy right now in 2020, being your authentic self. Well, what is your authentic self? Is it your ego that tells you that this is you? You know, it's like a client recently was telling their partner, you know, this is just who I am. You know, take it or leave it. This is who I am. When the truth is, it's not who he is at all. He becomes that way because he feels self-protective, but that's not his true self. So, you know, when you say authentic self, we have so many different opinions about what that is. What authentic self means. Does it mean you have the right to just be brazenly disrespectful of other people's feelings because that's just being me? Or do you say that your authentic self, you know, is my authentic self wants to be polyamorous with every person that I see. I'm going to have sex with every person that I see. That's my authentic self. Well, is it, or is that your, you know, inauthentic self, one could say, coping with the feeling of being terribly unwanted as a child? And so now you have to go out and prove how wanted you are. Is that freedom? Or is that compulsively coping in a habitual way? So the idea that I'm going to do whatever I want and that's freedom, it never works out well. It never works out well because it doesn't support you to feel in alignment with what you believe is for the highest good of all, including yourself. You know, everybody talks also about how we sort of intuitively know what's right and wrong. And I think that's generally true. I think children even know what's right and what's wrong after a certain age. I mean, somebody was telling me recently, a client, about one of their earliest memories was their mother humiliating them because they were fecal smearing on the wall and they were having such a good time. They thought they were just being delightful. And then she came in and made him feel like he was disgusting. And so it's like that kind of experience makes us very self-protective and makes us separate. He didn't know that that was wrong, quote unquote, you know, and it's not really wrong. It's just messy. But after you're a certain age, you have learned, you know, what's right and what's wrong. And you have a sense of being cruel to people and animals isn't right. But then later in life, you may have become habituated to being cruel and defensive of that stance. But what is real freedom is being neutral without an agenda. That's real freedom. And when you're neutral and without an agenda, what can you do? Well, you can listen then. You can listen to your partner. You can listen to your children and your boss. You can listen to higher consciousness from God, source, the universe, however you think of that. If you can be neutral and not have an opinion or an agenda, or if you do, you can set it aside and just, you know, one of the ways to get neutral is to just take deep breaths and tap on your solar plexus. And for some reason, that energetically helps you to get neutral. And when you get neutral, then you really are free because you're free from your ego dominating you. You're free from your opinions. You're free from your old habits. You're free from your rigid beliefs. You're free from the religious dogma. You're free from the Madison Avenue brainwashing. You're free when you are neutral and able to listen to intuitive guidance. And that intuitive guidance can take you to your true heart's desire. And I'm a case in point in this way, in that I used to think freedom was, you know, I was raised back in the 1960s in the time of free love, and I thought promiscuity was freedom. But that's not really in alignment with who I am. And my true heart's desire is to have a deep and sacred connection with one partner. And so that's freedom to me, because it's the freedom to be who I truly am and to be in alignment with what I truly believe is spiritually correct. And when I'm neutral, even about that, I can listen to hear, if this choice is in alignment with what is for the highest good of all, including me. And when we function from that place of being neutral and clear and open-minded and open-hearted to discovering what's for the highest good of all, and then energizing that option, then we feel free, because we feel safe, we feel relaxed, we feel like we are being guided by the universe. And that, my friends, is what real freedom is letting higher consciousness guide you by getting neutral. So I would love to hear from you. If you disagree with me, or if you have some other ideas about what real freedom is, I would just love to hear from you. So until next week, I'm Helen Hillix signing off, and from my heart to yours, I love you all.